Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching the Breakfast News with me, Frank Pereira. Let's begin with this morning's headlines. Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs to meet today. Decision on dates for monsoon session expected. Fasai continues crackdown on unsafe food items even as government mulls changes to Consumer Protection Act to make it stricter. Delegates of the US and China meet in Washington. Tensions over alleged cyber attack from China and the South China Sea remain in focus. And another WikiLeaks expose published. This time, the US is accused of spying on 3 French presidents between 2006 and 2012. Well, the Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs will meet today to decide the dates of the monsoon session of Parliament. 2 dates have been proposed for the start of the session on July 20th and 27th. The first one is being preferred. Whether the date, or rather whatever the date, the session will be nothing short of stormy, with the government facing mounting criticism from the opposition on the Lalit Modi controversy. The amendments to the Land Acquisition Bill will also be a contentious issue. There is already talk of a joint session of Parliament to get the Land Acquisition Bill passed, a move the opposition will oppose. In the meeting of the Union Cabinet and CCEA, rural component of Housing for All, export of iron ore to Japan and South Korea, and approval to India becoming a member of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank will be on the agenda. Moving on now, following the much-publicized ban on popular instant noodles brand Maggi, food safety watchdog, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India continues its crackdown. Fasai has decided to step up quality checks of packaged drinking water, milk and milk products and edible oil. The regulator has already asked state food commissioners to test milk, drinking water and edible oil for adulteration. On Tuesday, the authority ordered recall of 4 protein supplements, Mulmin Pro, Mulmin Syrup, Mulmin Plus capsule and Mulmin Drops with immediate effect. The manufacturer, sale and distribution of the products has been ordered to be stopped with immediate effect. The manufacturers have also been asked to recall the existing products from the market. Well, as the Fasai continues its crackdown, the centre is also planning to amend the Consumer Protection Act to include provisions for stringent action in cases of adulteration in food items. The amendments to the 1986 Act are likely to be brought during the forthcoming monsoon session of Parliament. The provisions might include punishment of up to life imprisonment for those found guilty. Here's more.
At a time when there is uproar over food adulteration, the Consumer Affairs Ministry is planning to make amendments in the existing Consumer Protection Act to give it more teeth. Consumer Affairs Minister Ramvilas Paswan has said there is need to change the 1986 Act to protect consumers from adulteration in food items.
विदेशी कंपनी के खिलाफ में नहीं है। हम चाहते हैं कि देश में विदेशी कंपनी भी आवे, लेकिन एक ही स्टैंडर्ड का चीज़ इंग्लैंड अमेरिका में जो है वो उसका स्टैंडर्ड एक रहे और भारत में उसका स्टैंडर्ड दूसरा आ जाए, ये ठीक नहीं है।
Recently, Nestlé's Maggi was banned across the country. Several test results claim the popular product contains excessive levels of lead. However, Paswan has clarified that the government does not intend to act only against foreign companies.
कंज्यूमर प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट है वो 1986 का बना हुआ है और आज उस समय में ई-कॉमर्स वगैरह कोई कॉन्सेप्ट भी नहीं था, तो आज ई-कॉमर्स का कहते हैं हुआ है, तो उसके लिए हम लोग क्या कहते हैं कानून बना रहे हैं। चौथा चीज़ मान लेते हैं कि सपोज कर लीजिए कि अभी जो हमारा कंज्यूमर कोर्ट है वो इंडिविजुअल के लिए है। आप शिकायत करते हैं तो आपको राहत मिलेगा, नहीं शिकायत कीजिएगा तो घर में बैठिए। अब उसको हम लोग क्लास के साथ में जोड़ रहे हैं, ऑथोरिटी बना रहे हैं।
Paswan has said that a conference of all state food ministers will be convened next month to discuss the matter. The states have a major say on consumer protection in India. To bring changes to the existing act, the centre needs to have the states on board as well. Shyam Sundar's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Joining me for a chat on this subject is the Assistant Editor, National Bureau of the Times of India, Shishmi Dey. Good morning. Thank you for joining me on the program, Shishmi. As far as the Consumer Protection Act is concerned, what are the provisions in the Act right now? And can companies like Nestle and some of the other bigwigs really get away and wriggle out of situations that they currently are in right now?
Yes, the Consumer Protection Act right now was as Mr. Paswan mentioned, was very old. So there are not enough provisions to accommodate the latest evolution in the market, especially in the packaged food market. So though consumers can go and seek redressal of grievances, there are not specific norms and standards set to address their concerns. Also, a major problem here is how do you classify brands? How do you classify products? So that is where big companies find loopholes, and even for that matter, a lot of fly-by-night companies are able to make their way into the market because of lack of specific provisions, norms to classify these products, to be able to keep a check and monitor these products.
Indeed. And how do we give more teeth to the Act? What needs to be done? What provisions need to be included so as to ensure that, companies, or rather bigwigs, do not get away with, adulteration in food products and any other things for that matter?
So, see, food products, there are different categories. There are packaged food products, and there are products which are used for mass consumptions. So now these products need to be specific. There is a need for specific norms in terms of packaging, labeling, standardizing, as well as awareness to make consumers more aware about what they are consuming. So the companies, the standards, the Act needs to make amendment, whereas where the companies are mandated to tell their consumers what they are consuming. So you cannot say something, you cannot post something on the label, whereas say something else in your ingredients and contain exactly something different. That is what is happening right now. And that is where the regulator is concerned, where the government is concerned, because there are a lot of products which have come into mass consumption. For instance, packaged water we are talking about, milk we are talking about, or edible oil. These are all mass consumption products. Apart from the other packaged food products like pasta, noodles, and sauces, most of which are being imported into our country. But there's a huge adulteration problem even in case of mass consumption products, and the regulator has constantly been saying that keep a check on products, because there's center and there's state. So the center has to tell the state that the whole enforcement is being done by state. So there's constant directions and directives to states that please keep a check on productions of products of mass consumption. For instance, water. If you go back 2 decades back, packaged water was not that common, for instance. So the provisions need to include these kind of products which have evolved into the market, which have entered into the market in past say 2 decades.
All right, Shishmi, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us there on the program and putting things into perspective as far as the Act is concerned. Moving on now, let's take a look at the news and events lined up for today in our segment, The Day Ahead. The Delhi government will table the economic survey in the Assembly today. The budget is to be presented tomorrow. The session started yesterday on a stormy note, with the BJP MLA Om Prakash Sharma being removed from the House as he tried to confront Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. The session will end on the 30th of June. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj will leave for a 2-day visit to Nepal today. She will attend the International Donor Conference on Nepal's reconstruction post the earthquake in Kathmandu. The External Affairs Minister is expected to make an announcement about India's assistance in rebuilding the country devastated by the massive earthquake. The Allahabad High Court will hear a petition in the death of journalist Jagendra Singh. Jagendra was allegedly set on fire by the police during a raid at his house in Shahjahanpur on June 1st. He succumbed to his injuries on June 8th. The Supreme Court on Monday had pulled up both the centre and the state governments, asking them why CBI should not investigate the case. Louisiana's Republican Governor Bobby Jindal will make history by becoming the first Indian American to enter the race for the US presidential elections. He will make the announcement at the Pontchartrain Center in Kenner. The 44-year-old won 2 terms in the US House of Representatives, becoming only the second Indian American elected to that chamber before becoming governor of Louisiana. The Indian women's hockey team will take on Poland in their third group game in the World Hockey League semi-finals. The women's team has lost both their games so far, losing 1-0 to host Belgium and final to New Zealand. 3 teams from each of the Hockey World League semi-finals are a short passage to the 2016 Olympics. Moving on, now incessant rains have unleashed a flood-like situation in many parts of the country. The northeast, particularly Assam, is already grappling with severe floods after the Brahmaputra began flowing above the danger mark. Meanwhile, torrential rains have raised fears of heavy flooding in Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana as well. Yasmo.
A flood threat is looming over western and southern India. Non-stop torrential downpour has caused massive waterlogging in many parts of Maharashtra. Normal life has been disrupted since Friday, causing massive inconvenience to commuters.
यहाँ पे चलने में दिक्कत है, देखो गाड़ी बंद पड़ रहा है, यहाँ से क्रॉसिंग करने जाएगा तो नहीं हो सकता क्योंकि लेडीज महिला आती जाती है, उनको बहुत तकलीफ होता है, लेकिन ये सालों साल का इधर कुछ होता नहीं ना कुछ होएगा.
The situation is grim in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, where the Godavari and its tributaries are in spate. Nearly a dozen villages along the river banks are inundated. The rains also wreaked havoc in Odisha, cutting off communication links in several villages in Malkangiri district. Over 20,000 people are reported to be affected.
On an average, in the last 2 days, we have received 17 to 18 centimeters per day of rainfall, and water level in many rivers has increased. Wherever necessary, we have opened temporary shelters.
Assam remains the worst affected, with as many as 70 villages affected by floods. More than 27,000 people are displaced, and nearly 1,600 hectares of crop area is completely submerged. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Let's bring you up to date with the other national news and updates in our segment Nationwide. Doctors in the national capital called off their 2-day-long strike last night following the Delhi government invoking the Essential Services Maintenance Act against them to normalize hospital functioning. The doctors were on strike pressing for hike in salaries as well as seeking government's intervention in other issues. Their demands have already been accepted. 679 villages have been adopted under the Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana in its first year. Union Rural Development Minister Chaudhry Birendra Singh has also announced that the final date of adopting villages has been extended till June 30th. Under the scheme, both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha MPs have to adopt 3 Gram Panchayats in 5 years, where special attention will be given for undertaking development works and providing basic amenities. The Delhi Transport Corporation will soon deploy home guards on city buses. Delhi Police has relieved around 2,000 guards who are scheduled to be deployed on city buses in the first phase. Deployment of marshals on buses has been one of the major recommendations of experts for improving women's security. The Palamu Express derailed on Tuesday after suspected Maoists blew up a stretch of railway tracks in Latehar district. The blast occurred at around 8 p.m. near a village between Chipadohar and Parwadi. The engine and 3 coaches of the train jumped the rails following the blast. However, no casualty or injury was reported in the incident. Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come. French allegations of spying against the US NSA. Now they are accused of keeping tabs on French presidents. Details coming up on the other side. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
New government in New Delhi. New faces.
People are not investing because they are scared of your tax administration.
New thinking.
The auction process is a fair and good process.
You cannot have a one-size-fits-all reform policy.
For insights and perspective,
Judiciary should be more concerned about corruption within itself.
The Modi government slogan of अच्छे दिन आने वाले हैं. Soon the people's slogan will be हमारे पुराने दिन लौटा दो.
the biggest show on economic policy. Watch State of the Economy.
Come back, you're watching Rajya Sabha television. The United States expressed deep concerns over recent cyber theft as US and Chinese leaders met for the 7th China-US Strategic and Economic Dialogue. Both sides also called for a constructive bilateral relationship, with China saying that the two could manage differences and should avoid confrontation. Tensions over the South China Sea were also a major issue of contention. Here's more.
Fault lines in US-China relationship, even as both countries vowed to work together to avoid a confrontation. Both sides also expressed desire for constructive bilateral ties and the need for economic reforms.
双方要牢牢地把握两国关系正确的方向。只要中美双方从大处着眼。
It is critical that China continue to move to a more market-determined exchange rate and a more transparent exchange rate policy. But further domestic financial sector reforms and interest rate liberalization are needed.
The US also expressed deep concerns over China's state-sponsored cyber theft. Just a few weeks have passed since the
Thus, over the attack in 2008 in Mumbai, in which 166 people were killed, the cases have made virtually no progress in more than 5 years, paving the way for his release. Lakhvi's release was viewed with concern in US, Russia, France and Germany. Washington has also demanded his rearrest. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And in Pakistan, an intense heat wave in the Sindh province has claimed over 700 lives in the country's worst heat wave in more than a decade. With bodies continuing to flood major hospitals, the country is facing an unprecedented situation. Here's a detailed report.
A rare heat wave has gripped Pakistan since the advent of Ramzan last Friday. Temperatures soaring up to 45 degrees Celsius have killed hundreds of people, mostly the elderly, homeless and daily wage laborers.
गर्मी इतनी हो रही है, बेतहाशा बर्दाश्त नहीं है, बड़े बुजुर्ग हैं, बड़े एज के लोग हैं. अब क्या होगा ये तो हुकूमत को भी नहीं सोच रही ना.
A major power breakdown in many parts of Karachi led to shortage of water supply, adding to the problems of the suffering Pakistanis. Hundreds are being treated for heat-related ailments like fever, dehydration and low blood pressure, while dead bodies are piling up in major hospitals.
बहुत गर्मी है, कारोबार करने का दिल नहीं कर रहा है, घर पे जाके बैठने का दिल कर रहा है, घर पे जाते तो लाइट नहीं होती है, बिजली की भी लोड शेडिंग चल रही है.
The scorching heat was earlier expected to continue further, but sudden heavy rains and cool winds broke the spell in many parts. Pakistan Meteorological Department's prediction of rainfall for the next 24 hours has brought temperatures down.
अभी भी चूँकि एक मानसून का सिलसिला पाकिस्तान के नज़दीक पहुँच चुका है और अगले 24 घंटों में हवा में नमी का तनासब पंजाब और सिंध में काफ़ी हद तक बढ़ जाएगा, जिसके वजह से अगर 24 घंटों के बाद एक बारिश का सिलसिला होने का इम्कान है.
The Pakistani government has imposed emergency at all hospitals and has increased stocks of medical supplies. Meanwhile, the Pakistani army and paramilitary rangers have set up special centers to treat heat stroke victims. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Here's a quick wrap now of the other international news this Wednesday morning. Hungary has suspended a key EU rule that says it must take back asylum seekers who first enter Hungary but travel on to other countries. Hungary is said to be overburdened by illegal immigrants. Officials say that the figure stands at over 60,000 people. The announcement comes just days after Hungary announced a plan to erect a border fence against migrants. Thousands of Greeks from the communist-affiliated trade union PAME, as well as pensioners' associations, demonstrated against austerity in Athens on Tuesday. They accused the ruling Syriza party of selling out to international creditors. Syriza was voted in on an anti-austerity ticket, promising to roll back painful reforms. Islamic State militants have blown up two ancient shrines they consider sacrilegious in Palmyra, a 2,000-year-old UNESCO World Heritage Site in central Syria. These are the first reports of any damage to the Palmyra structures after IS took over the ancient city. Before and after pictures showed several militants carrying explosives and the shrines reduced to rubble. Moving on to some sports news now. Stung by their first ever series defeat against Bangladesh, India will look to salvage some pride and prevent the hosts from registering a rare clean sweep when they go into the third and final cricket one-day today. After demolishing Pakistan in a recent three-match series, Bangladesh will be looking to do the same to the Mahendra Singh Dhoni-led India. India have been outplayed by Bangladesh, who have discovered a hero in young left-arm pacer Mustafizur Rahman. Despite the loss, beleaguered skipper Dhoni insists that the current team has the best available players. The men in blue have been outplayed in virtually every department of the game since their 79-run loss in the first match, and the slide has been difficult to arrest. Bangladesh, on the other hand, have been brilliant on all counts, and the results are a fair indication of their rise in world cricket. Well, here's all the overnight sports news in our Sports Beat. Indian men registered their second consecutive victory in the Hockey World League semi-final, defeating Poland 3-0 on Tuesday. Yuvraj Valmiki, skipper Sardar Singh and Devinder Valmiki scored for India. Poland came close to scoring off a penalty corner in the 21st minute, but Indian custodian PR Srijesh warded off danger. India had registered a 3-2 win over France in their opener on Saturday. England set themselves up for the Ashes by ensuring New Zealand's tour ended in a comprehensive defeat as they thrashed the Black Caps by 56 runs in a lone T20. New Zealand, set 192 for victory, collapsed at 135 all out, losing the last 5 wickets for just 4 runs in 12 balls. The first Ashes test starts in Cardiff on July 8th. Paris has entered the race for the 2024 Olympics, proclaiming the bid on Olympic Day in what promises to be a tightly fought contest. Paris, which failed in bids for the 2008 and 2012 Olympics, joined Boston, Rome and Hamburg as candidates. Bids must be officially submitted by September 15 this year, and the decision will be taken in Lima on September 15, 2017. Liverpool have agreed to a £29 million deal with Hoffenheim to sign forward Roberto Firmino. The Anfield side have been looking to strengthen their attacking options and have held talks with Carlos Bacca, Solomon Rondon and Firmino. Firmino can play anywhere across the front three and is currently on Copa America duty with Brazil. If completed, he will be Liverpool's second most expensive signing. That's it on this edition of The Breakfast News. Have a nice day.